Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Brunswick's virtual church service. My name's David Q, and I am the Vice Chair of our Board of Trustees. It's really weird for me to be welcoming you through a camera rather than in person, and I'm sure it's strange for all of you too. And there's a lot of things that are difficult and different for us these days. This is the fourth of our virtual church services that we've had to do this year, and it's going to go on for a while. I can't tell you how long. I hope not too long, but we are very lucky to have so many people that are dedicated to making these services happen, to putting together music, sermons, and all the different pieces of the service, and then editing it all so that it's available for everybody to see. So thank you to all those people that do this, and I'm glad that you're here with us today to watch this service. So again, thank you for watching the Unitarian Universalist Church of Brunswick's church service this morning, and if you have some time afterwards, feel free to go to our website at UUCB, it's uubrunswick.org, and again, welcome.
Shalom Havarim, peace friends. May we gather this day in peace. May we gather this day in courage and strength. May we gather this day in hope and love. Shalom Havarim.
Today, as we celebrate liberation, it feels like a very good time to share with you all the story of Passover. Passover is a Jewish holiday. This year, it's celebrated April 8th through April 16th. Now, Passover is one of the most popular Jewish holidays, and it's celebrated by Jewish families all over the world by going to a very special dinner party called a Seder. At the Seder, they read a script from a book called Haggadah, which urges families to try foods that they don't usually eat, to ask questions, to play with their food, and to even slouch in their chairs. They do all this in celebration of Passover. Now, here's the story of Passover. Long, long ago, there was not enough food in the land of Canaan, which today is called Israel. The Israelites of Canaan traveled for many days to go live in a land called Egypt, where there was plenty of food. Welcome as honored guests by the Egyptian king, the Pharaoh, they ended up living in Egypt for many, many years, over 400 years. And after all those years, a new Pharaoh came, and he was unhappy that the Pharaoh from long ago had let the Israelites stay in Egypt for so long. The new Pharaoh was afraid that there were so many Israelites that they would try to become the rulers over the Egyptians. But really, All that the Israelites wanted to do was farm and raise their sheep. When the Pharaoh needed buildings and statues to be built for his cities, he decided that the Israelites should be the ones to do all the work, and so he made them his slaves. Making bricks and pulling heavy loads, they worked for hours and hours in the sun with very little food and water. By adding more and more cruel burdens, Pharaoh made life extremely hard for the Israelites. The Torah, the Jewish book of law, teaches that God realized it was time for the Israelites to get out of Egypt. Knowing that the Israelites would be more likely to listen to one of their own, God picked a young man named Moses. He spoke to him from a burning bush. Amazed that the bush was burning without turning to ash, Moses knew that God was strong, but he didn't feel like he was strong enough to be a hero, so God told Moses that his brother Aaron would help him. And Moses and Aaron appeared before the Pharaoh to deliver God's message, "Let my people go." The Pharaoh answered, "No." So God caused Moses' walking stick to turn into a snake to show his power. This just made the Pharaoh force the slaves to work even harder. Since God wanted to change the Pharaoh's mind by showing him what it felt like to be treated so badly, God created troubles like frogs and darkness. During each trouble, Moses and Aaron would say to the Pharaoh, "Let my people go." The terrified Pharaoh would say yes, but as soon as the trouble stopped, he would change his mind and say no. So this went on for a little bit, and finally, the last trouble was so terrible that when Moses and Aaron said, "Let my people go," the Pharaoh finally answered yes, and he meant it this time. Or he thought he did, until all of the Israelites were gone, and he thought to himself, "Who's going to build my city for free?" So he and his armies chased after the Israelites to bring them back. They thought that it would be easier if they caught them at the shore before they got to the sea. But when they got there, they were astonished to see that the sea had parted, and the Israelites were crossing through on dry land. God had caused the water to separate, the biggest miracle yet. Moses, Aaron, and their sister Miriam, and all the other Israelites, sang and danced to celebrate their escape from slavery. Today, Jewish families gather around their Seder tables to celebrate that great escape and by retelling their story of liberation.
And everyone neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And everyone neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And everyone neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And everyone neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And everyone neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And everyone neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And everyone neath the vine shall turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And everyone neath the plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And everyone neath the plowshares turn their swords, shall live in peace and shall learn war no more. And everyone neath the plowshares turn their swords, shall live in peace and shall learn war no more. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more.
Desert Spring by Reverend Victoria Safford. They had no idea where they were going when they left that night. In the dark, without lights, without shoes, without bread, their children smothered against them so they would make no noise. They had no idea what they were getting into following this Moses, this wild-eyed one who claimed visions and made promises, but who after all could guarantee them nothing except death if they were caught. They had no idea, these slaves, what it could mean, this promise of land, their own country, and life abundant. Of freedom they knew nothing, except what they could taste by living in its opposite, slavery, and that taste became a hunger, and that hunger became insatiable until they were ravenous for freedom, and they went out then. But no one knows to this day whether they were led by Moses or by the outstretched arm and mighty hand of something else, of something eternal, as they would afterwards and always claim, or whether their own human, hungry will made them flee that night from Pharaoh. They went into the wilderness. There they wandered 40 years, which in those days was a lifetime. 40 was a good old age. So many of them died before getting anywhere, and many were born in the desert and grew to adulthood knowing nothing but the journey. Not slavery, not freedom, just the going. They whined and complained and muttered, and some mutinied, for they were a stiff-necked and rebellious people. You can read it for yourself. Ungrateful people, even when manna rained down from heaven and quails were sent to feed them. Unhappy people, longing out loud even for the familiar security of Egypt, of all places, where at least they knew what to expect, as awful as it was. Impatient people, making cheap little idols and gods of metal to bargain with in secret when the traveling got hard or merely dull, and the days and years became monotonous. In the springtime, we remember the promised land is not a destination. It is a way of going. The land beyond the Jordan, that country of freedom and dignity and laughter. You carry it inside you all the while. It is planted in your mind and heart already, before you ever start out, before it even occurs to you that in order to leave that life in Egypt, the intolerable bondage of that life, what you need to do is stand up and walk forward.
The Jewish festival Passover begins this Wednesday evening. Typically, Jews observe the holiday with a special meal called a Seder that gathers family and friends together. They tell the Passover story together. They sing together. They feast together. And right away with that word, together, we come across a great irony. For this year, it is hard for people to be together. This year, Passover must be observed from safe distances. This year, no feasting unless it's with members of your immediate household. No inviting the neighbors in. No having family come from far and wide so that everyone can be together. None of that. There is no denying the rupture physical distancing has caused for a holiday meant to bring people together. There is a second irony in celebrating Passover this year. The first and most widely recognized lesson of Passover is freedom. It is a liberation holiday. Passover celebrates the liberation of a people held in slavery for so many generations they no longer even remembered what it was to be free. But this year, it's hard to muster a joyous shout for freedom when all over the world people are locked down, sheltering in place, allowed to leave their homes only for the barest necessities. So what are we to make of the Passover story this year? Well, I'll tell you. There is a lot in that story that will help us now. First, there is the metaphor of journey. And there is also my cat trying to get into the picture here. Come on. You say hello to everyone. Here he is, little Stevie. There is the metaphor of journey. Will we ever get to see our friends in person again? Will we ever get to sing hymns together again? Will we ever get to shop for anything other than essential items again? Will we ever get to go on long trips again? Where is the journey this year, you might ask? But the idea of journeying isn't limited to traveling from one physical location to another. There are journeys of the heart and soul, too. And while we shelter in our homes, we might think that similarly, home itself is not just a physical location. Home is a kind of feeling, too. The feeling of being at peace in the world. The feeling of being at peace in one's body. The feeling of being at peace in one's heart and soul. The quiet weeks ahead of us give us an opportunity to journey in a new way. They allow us to find home another way. When the ancient Hebrews began their exodus out of Egypt, they were headed home, their physical location of the Holy Land, the home of their dreams. According to the Bible, it took them 40 years to get there. 40 years! Have you ever looked at a map and seen the distance between Egypt and Israel? They are side by side. They were only going from here to there, a distance of some miles to be sure, but not 40 years worth of miles. So maybe that journey in the Exodus story, lasted so long because the people needed to learn how to be a people together. They needed to find that centered place within that allowed them to be together. So while they were wandering in the desert for 40 years, they were taking another kind of journey, a journey of heart and soul, a journey that knitted them together as a people. Our world has an opportunity to take a similar kind of journey with the virus that we're confronting now and the physical distancing that we are adopting now. A new kind of journey to a new kind of promised land. Maybe now is the time to understand that we are one world linked together. Surely that is obvious when we see the spread of the COVID-19 virus all across this world. Maybe now is the time to make new choices. Think of the choices we can make. We can choose to care for one another. Staying physically distant so that we don't spread germs to each other, that we help each other stay as healthy as possible in this time of pandemic. And maybe we can care for each other in other ways too. Staying in touch with a letter or a phone call or an email or even a Zoom chat to people that we love and can't be with right now. We can choose generosity. In these days when the safety of all requires that we take only what we need. We have seen in recent weeks what happens to the grocery shelves when people conduct themselves out of panic and greed. We have an opportunity to choose differently than that. We have an opportunity to choose patience, understanding, and kindness as we navigate the difficulties of spending long times either alone, isolated, or isolated with our families, the people we love most, but who also have the most potential to drive us crazy. We can choose gratitude as we consider the medical people, the cashiers at the grocery stores, the pharmacists, the police, the firefighters, the UPS and newspaper delivery people, and all of those whose jobs demand that they continue to work facing the public as they do. We can choose to open our eyes to inequities in our social fabric. While the COVID-19 virus represents a health risk for all, and the physical distancing represents an inconvenience for most, the financial consequences of shutting everything down are disastrous only for some. We can open our eyes to see that. We can choose compassion as we hold in our hearts those who are sick, those whose loved ones are sick, and those who are grieving. We are journeying from life as we knew it to something new altogether. Can we create a promised land together? A land of caring, of patience, of kindness, of understanding? A land of equality, gratitude, and compassion? Perhaps with the right choices, we will emerge from our quarantine changed, with bigger hearts and greater understanding than before. That is my hope, and that is my prayer. As we think of the Passover story today, we might remember the Jews have been celebrating Passover for generation after generation. Even during times of terrible deprivation and oppression, times more dire than the times we are currently living through. For all those generations, Passover has held out a story of hope that we can make it through, despite slavery, despite plagues, despite hunger and deprivation, despite fear and loneliness, despite worry and grief, we can make it through. The day my family moved to Brunswick back in 2007, that actual day, my husband's best friend Charlie died quite suddenly. Charlie loved motorcycles, loved them. And so the day after he died, his son Al set out on a memorial drive on Charlie's motorcycle. When Al stopped for a red light, he glanced over at the car right beside him, and he met that driver's eyes. And all of a sudden, that driver, a complete stranger, said to him, "You have to look further down the road. If you look further down the road and hold your line, everything will be okay." Imagine that. Out of the blue, this stranger saying those words to a bereft son who was missing his dad. It was almost as if Charlie himself was speaking through the mouth of that stranger. Well, the light changed, and Al and the driver set off on their different ways. But Al was changed. His journey was changed. We are on a journey, my friends. That stranger's sudden, unexpected wisdom may help us now. We need to look further down the road and hold our line. We will find our way. We have no idea where we are going or how long it will take to get there, but we will find our way, maybe even journeying to a whole new promised land as we do. Let us be together in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Holy One of wonder, of opportunity, of changes, we seek the wisdom and courage to open our hearts this day to caring, generosity, kindness, understanding, and compassion. Help us to see our world more clearly. Help us to find our ways to serve with love. Let us reach out our hearts this day to the people who are serving us in hospitals, in doctors' offices, all around our country and world, to first responders, and to all public servants who help us in these stressful times, to the clerks at grocery stores and gas stations and more. May we give thanks for them in these moments. May we find ways to express our gratitude to them. Let us reach out our hearts as well to all who are sick, to all who are grieving, to all who are lonely or scared, to all who are facing financial strain. May we find ways to reach out to them. May we blow gently on that little ember of hope we hold inside of us, awakening within us vision, strength, and courage to face the days ahead. We seek blessing on our journeys. We offer blessings to all who journey with us. So may it be. Amen.
Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom, Shalom. Lahitraot, Lahitraot, Shalom, Shalom. Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom, Shalom. Lahitraot, Lahitraot, Shalom, Shalom. Shalom Havarim, 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 Shalom, Shalom.
May the soft rays of early dawn gently light your faces. May your days be filled with courage and strength. May the quiet of evening bring peace to your hearts, and may the night bring you blessed rest for the journey ahead. So may it be. Amen.